The flickering fluorescent lights of his office hummed a monotonous tune, a soundtrack to Dr. Adrian Thorne's unraveling. He adjusted his glasses, the sterile white of the room amplifying the shadows clinging to the corners of his vision. Ever since Elias, his last patient, Adrian felt different, connected somehow to something dark and unknowable. Elias had been a puzzle box of anxieties and bizarre compulsions, claiming to see the future, to witness deaths before they occurred. Adrian, the pragmatist, the scientist, had dismissed it as psychosis, albeit a remarkably vivid one. He prescribed medication, encouraged grounding techniques, and patiently listened to Elias's increasingly frantic pronouncements of impending doom. Then Elias took his own life, leaving Adrian with a void in his practice and a gnawing unease in his mind. It started subtly, a fleeting image, a flash of red against asphalt, a choked gasp. He dismissed it as stress, the residue of Elias's disturbing narratives clinging to his subconscious. But then the visions intensified, becoming clearer, more visceral. He saw a woman slipping on ice, the sickening crack of her skull against the pavement. He saw a child choking on a piece of candy, the frantic, helpless look in his mother's eyes. He saw them all strangers whose deaths played out in agonizing detail within the confines of his own skull. "It's just anxiety, Adrian," he muttered to himself, pacing his office. Lack of sleep, too much coffee. He tried to rationalize it, to dissect the images with the clinical detachment he usually reserved for his patients. But the cold, hard logic that had always been his anchor was failing him. He was losing control, his mind a runaway train hurtling towards an unknown destination. He tried to ignore them, to bury himself in work, in the mundane routines of his life. But the visions persisted, growing stronger, more insistent. They invaded his waking hours, his dreams, his every thought. He saw a man drowning in a bathtub, the water turning crimson. He saw a building engulfed in flames, figures silhouetted against the inferno. He saw them, felt them, experienced their final moments in a way that was both terrifying and undeniably real. One morning, Adrian woke up in a cold sweat. The image of an elderly man collapsing on a park bench seared into his mind. The man clutched his chest, his face contorted in agony, as a flock of pigeons scattered around him. It was vivid, horrifyingly so. He shook it off, showered, and forced himself to eat breakfast, the phantom pain of the man's chest still echoing in his own. As he drove to work, he couldn't shake the image. It clung to him like a shroud, a constant reminder of the horrors that were playing out in his mind. He took a different route, hoping to avoid any triggers, any reminders of the grim premonitions he was now forced to endure. He parked his car, his hands trembling slightly. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. Just a normal day, he told himself. Just a normal day. But as he walked towards his office building, he saw it. A park bench, bathed in the morning sunlight. And on that bench, an elderly man, clutching his chest. The pigeons scattered as the man slumped forward, lifeless. Adrian froze, his blood turning to ice. The vision, it had come true. He stumbled back, his mind reeling. This wasn't stress. This wasn't anxiety. This was something else, something far more sinister. He had to understand what was happening to him. He had to find a way to stop the visions, before they consumed him entirely. But as he delved deeper into the mystery, he began to suspect that his visions were not random, that they were connected to something far more terrifying than he could have ever imagined. Could Elias have been telling the truth? And if so, what had Elias unleashed upon him? The cold dread that gripped Adrian intensified with each shallow breath. The park, once a serene oasis in the urban landscape, now felt like a stage set for his personal nightmare. He forced himself to approach the bench, his legs heavy and unresponsive. The man was gone, an ambulance siren wailing in the distance, a stark confirmation of the horror he had witnessed beforehand. Back in his office, the sterile environment offered no solace. Adrian sifted through Elias's file, rereading the notes he'd meticulously taken during their sessions. Elias had spoken of a presence, a puppeteer pulling the strings of reality, forcing him to witness atrocities yet to come. Adrian had dismissed it as delusional ramblings, symptoms of a fractured mind. Now he wasn't so sure. He focused on one particular phrase Elias had repeated obsessively. The Weaver. He sees all, controls all. Who was the Weaver? Was it a metaphor for Elias's psychosis, or something far more tangible, far more terrifying? Driven by a desperate need for answers, Adrian decided to revisit Elias's apartment. The building was a dilapidated tenement on the outskirts of the city, a far cry from Adrian's own comfortable existence. The air hummed heavy with the smell of stale cigarettes and unfulfilled dreams. He showed his credentials to the hesitant landlord, a gaunt man with eyes that held a lifetime of weariness. Elias's apartment was a chaotic mess. Books were piled haphazardly, their pages dog-eared and annotated with frantic scribbles. Empty coffee cups littered every surface, a testament to sleepless nights fueled by anxiety and paranoia. The walls were covered in disturbing drawings, grotesque figures and cryptic symbols that seemed to writhe before Adrian's eyes. He spent hours meticulously examining every detail, searching for a clue, a hint of what had driven Elias to the brink. He found journals filled with rambling thoughts, fragmented sentences that spoke of fear, control, and the ever-present gaze of the Weaver. One entry caught his eye. The music. It's in the music. He uses the music to reach us. Music? Adrian frowned. Elias had never mentioned music during their sessions. He scanned the room and found a dusty, old record player in a corner. Beside it, a single vinyl record lay in its sleeve. The label was faded and illegible, but the album cover depicted a swirling vortex of colors, a hypnotic design that seemed to pull him in. He hesitated, a sense of foreboding washing over him. He knew he shouldn't, but the compulsion to listen was overwhelming. He placed the record on the turntable, the needle dropping with a soft hiss. The music began, a discordant melody that seemed to vibrate deep within his bones. It was unsettling, dissonant, a cacophony of sounds that assaulted his senses. As the music swelled, the room seemed to distort, the walls closing in around him. He felt a pressure building in his head, a throbbing pain that intensified with each passing second. Suddenly, a new image flashed before his eyes. He was standing in a crowded subway station, the air thick with the smell of exhaust fumes and sweat. He saw a young woman waiting on the platform, her eyes glued to her phone. A train roared into the station, its brakes screeching, and then a figure pushed her from behind, sending her tumbling onto the tracks. The vision was so vivid, so real, that Adrian gasped aloud. He ripped the needle from the record, the music abruptly cutting off. He stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest, his mind reeling. He had just witnessed another death, and this time he had a feeling it was about to happen. He had to stop it. He raced out of the apartment, ignoring the landlord's bewildered stare. He jumped into his car and sped towards the nearest subway station, his mind racing, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He arrived at the station just as the evening rush hour was beginning. The platform was packed with commuters, their faces etched with exhaustion and impatience. He scanned the crowd, searching for the woman from his vision, the one he knew was about to die. He spotted her, a young woman with long brown hair, engrossed in her phone. She stood near the edge of the platform, oblivious to the danger that lurked nearby. He pushed his way through the crowd, his heart pounding in his chest. He had to reach her, to warn her, to save her. But as he got closer, he saw him, a shadowy figure standing behind her, his face obscured by the crowd. He recognized the posture, the stance, the subtle shift in weight. It was the figure from his vision, the one who was about to push her onto the tracks. Adrian lunged forward, shouting a warning, but it was too late. The figure shoved the woman, sending her sprawling onto the tracks just as the train roared into the station. Adrian watched in horror as the train slammed into her, the screech of metal on metal drowning out his screams. He stood there, paralyzed, as the crowd surged around him, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. He had failed. He had been too late. As the police arrived and began to cordon off the scene, Adrian felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see a detective, his face grim. "Dr. Thorne," the detective said, his voice low and serious. "We need to ask you some questions." Adrian felt a chill run down his spine. He knew what was coming. He knew he was a suspect, but he also knew that he was more than that. He was a victim, a pawn in a game he didn't understand. As he was led away in handcuffs, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that the Weaver was still out there, pulling the strings, orchestrating his descent into madness. And he knew, with a growing sense of dread, that this was only the beginning. What if, he thought, the detective wasn't just investigating a crime, but investigating him? The interrogation room was a study in oppressive neutrality. Gray walls, a steel table, and a single unforgiving fluorescent light buzzing overhead. Detective Harding, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with skepticism, sat across from Adrian, his gaze unwavering. "Dr. Thorne," Harding began, his voice a low rumble. "You were at the subway station when Ms. Eleanor Vance was killed." "I was," Adrian replied, his voice barely a whisper. "You knew Ms. Vance?" "No, I didn't know her." "Then what were you doing there, doctor?" "At that specific platform, at that specific time." Adrian hesitated, How could he explain the visions, the music, the weaver, without sounding completely insane? I had a feeling, he stammered. A premonition. I knew something bad was going to happen. Harding raised a skeptical eyebrow. A premonition? You're a psychologist, doctor. You don't believe in that sort of thing, do you? I didn't, Adrian admitted. But I saw it, detective. I saw her death before it happened. In my mind. Harding leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. And how did you see this? Premonition. Doctor? Crystal ball? Tarot cards. Adrian closed his eyes, the image of Eleanor Vance falling onto the tracks flashing before him. It's hard to explain, he said. It's like a vision, a waking dream. I just see it, as if I'm actually there. Harding remained silent for a moment, studying Adrian intently. And this vision told you who pushed Miss Vance? No, Adrian said quickly. I just saw a figure, a shadowy figure. I couldn't make out their face. But you were close enough to try and stop it, weren't you, doctor? Close enough to be considered a suspect. Adrian's heart sank. I swear, detectives, I didn't push her. I tried to save her. Harding sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Dr. Thorne, we found traces of a sedative in Ms. Vance's system. Powerful one. The same type of sedative that you prescribed to your patients. Adrian's blood ran cold. That's impossible, he whispered. I would never. We also found your fingerprints on the victim's arm, Harding continued, his voice relentless. Prints that weren't smudged, doctor. Prints that suggest you grabbed her, not tried to save her. Adrian felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. This couldn't be happening. He was being framed, manipulated. But by whom? And how? Detective, you have to believe me, he pleaded. I'm being set up. Someone is controlling me, making me see these things, making me do these things. Harding smirked. Controlling you, doctor? That sounds a bit delusional even for a psychologist. Maybe you should consider taking some time off, getting some help. The interrogation continued for hours, Harding relentlessly probing, Adrian desperately trying to defend himself. He told him about Elias, about the visions, about the music, about the weaver. But the more he explained, the more insane he sounded. Finally, Harding leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. All right, doctor, he said. We're going to let you go, for now. But don't leave town, and be available for further questioning. And Dr. Thorne, he added, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper, if I find out you had anything to do with Miss Vance's death, I will personally see to it that you spend the rest of your life behind bars. Adrian was released, stepping out into the cool night air, feeling like a condemned man. He was alone, suspected of murder, and haunted by visions he couldn't control. He had to clear his name, but he also had to understand what was happening to him. He had to find the weaver. He returned to his office, the flickering fluorescent lights now seeming to mock him. He sat at his desk, staring at Elias's file, searching for answers. He reread the notes, the journals, the cryptic drawings, trying to decipher the secrets they held. He focused on the phrase that had haunted him since he first heard it. The music. It's in the music. He remembered the record he had found in Elias's apartment, the discordant melody that had triggered the vision of Eleanor Vance's death. He had to listen to it again. He had to understand how it worked, how it could control his mind. He drove back to Elias's apartment, the dilapidated building now seeming even more sinister in the darkness. He let himself in with the key he had kept, the air inside heavy with the scent of decay and despair. He found the record player, the dusty vinyl record lying beside it. He hesitated, a sense of dread washing over him. He knew it was dangerous, that the music could further unravel his mind, but he had no choice. He had to take the risk. He placed the record on the turntable, the needle dropping with a soft hiss. The music began, the discordant melody filling the room, vibrating deep within his bones. It was even more unsettling than he remembered, a cacophony of sounds that assaulted his senses, twisting his thoughts, distorting his perception. As the music swelled, the room began to spin, the walls closing in around him. He felt a pressure building in his head, a throbbing pain that intensified with each passing second. Suddenly, a new image flashed before his eyes. He was standing in his own office, staring at his own reflection in the mirror. But it wasn't his reflection. It was someone else, someone with cold, dead eyes and a sinister smile. The figure in the mirror raised a hand, pointing a gun at his head. Adrian gasped, stumbling back, his heart pounding in his chest. He ripped the needle from the record, the music abruptly cutting off. He stood there, gasping for breath, his mind reeling. He had just seen his own death. But then, the figure in the mirror spoke, its voice a chilling whisper that echoed in his mind. "It's time, Adrian," the voice said. "It's time to embrace your destiny." Adrian froze, his blood turning to ice. He knew who the figure was. He knew who was controlling him. It was him. Or rather, it was the Weaver, the evil force that had taken root in his mind, turning him into a puppet, a killer. And now, the Weaver was ready to complete its masterpiece. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning every corner, searching for a weapon, a way to defend himself. But there was nothing. He was trapped, helpless, at the mercy of the evil that resided within him. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the darkness. He knew what he had to do. He had to fight back, to try and regain control of his mind, to stop the Weaver before it was too late. But as he prepared for the final battle, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was already lost. The Weaver had been inside him for so long, manipulating his thoughts, distorting his reality, that he didn't know who he was anymore. Was he Adrian Thorne, the renowned psychologist? Or was he just a puppet, a vessel for the Weaver's evil desires? He opened his eyes, his gaze hardening. He didn't know the answer, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going down without a fight. But what if the fight had already been lost, the moment Elias transferred the Weaver's influence to him? What if every action he'd taken since then had been a carefully orchestrated move by the entity within? He lunged towards the mirror, his fist clenched, ready to shatter the reflection, to destroy the image of the monster that had taken over his life. But as his fist connected with the glass, it didn't shatter. Instead, it passed right through, as if the mirror was nothing more than an illusion, a gateway to another dimension. He stumbled forward, his body following his hand, and found himself falling, tumbling through a vortex of swirling colors and distorted shapes. He felt a disorienting sense of weightlessness, as if he were floating in a void, disconnected from reality. He landed hard, his body slamming against a cold, unforgiving surface. He gasped for breath, his lungs burning, his head throbbing. He looked around, trying to make sense of his surroundings. He was in his office, but it wasn't his office. It was a twisted, distorted version of his office, a nightmarish reflection of his own psyche. The walls were cracked and peeling, the furniture was broken and overturned, and the air was thick with the smell of decay and despair. Shadows danced in the corners, whispering secrets he couldn't understand. In the center of the room, a figure stood waiting. It was him, but it wasn't him. It was the Weaver, the evil force that had possessed his mind, now taking physical form, a grotesque parody of his former self. The Weaver smiled, a chilling, predatory grin that sent shivers down Adrian's spine. "Welcome, Adrian," it said, its voice a distorted echo of his own. "Welcome to your mind." Adrian stared at the Weaver, his heart pounding in his chest. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice trembling. "This is where you've been hiding, Adrian," the Weaver replied, his eyes glinting with malevolent glee. "This is the prison you've built for yourself, and now it's time to break free." The Weaver gestured around the room, its hands sweeping across the distorted landscape. "Look around you, Adrian," it said. "See the chaos, the pain, the despair. This is what you've been suppressing, the darkness you've been denying. But it's all a part of you, Adrian. It's who you truly are." "No," Adrian said, shaking his head. "That's not true. I'm not like this." The Weaver laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the room. "Denial, Adrian? Is that really the best you can do? You think you're a good man, a healer, a savior? You're a liar, Adrian. You're a monster, just like me." The Weaver took a step closer, his eyes burning into Adrian's soul. "You've always had this darkness within you, Adrian," it whispered. "The anger, the resentment, the desire for control. I just unlocked it, gave it a voice, a purpose." "You're wrong," Adrian insisted, his voice rising. "I can fight you. I can stop you." "Can you, Adrian?" the Weaver taunted. "Can you fight yourself? Can you destroy the very essence of your being?" The Weaver snapped its fingers, and the room began to transform. Images flashed before Adrian's eyes, fragments of his past, moments of pain, regret, and shame. He saw his father, a cold, distant man who had never shown him affection. He saw his mother, a fragile woman who had succumbed to depression and despair. He saw his failed relationships, the women he had hurt, the promises he had broken. "Remember, Adrian?" the Weaver whispered, its voice dripping with venom. "Remember the pain, the frustration, the loneliness. This is your legacy, Adrian. This is what you've created." Adrian recoiled, his mind reeling, his heart breaking. He couldn't escape the images, the memories, the overwhelming sense of guilt and despair. "It's all true, Adrian," the weaver said, its voice now soft and soothing. "You can't deny it any longer. You're weak, Adrian. You're broken. And I'm the only one who can fix you." The weaver extended its hand, its fingers long and skeletal. "Join me, Adrian," it said. "Embrace the darkness. Let me show you the power, the freedom, the ecstasy of true control." Adrian hesitated, his mind torn, his will wavering. The weaver's words were seductive, tempting him with the promise of power and release. He wanted to believe it, to surrender to the darkness, to finally escape the pain that had haunted him for so long. But then, a new image flashed before his eyes. He saw Eleanor Vance, the young woman he had failed to save, her face contorted in terror as the train slammed into her. He saw the elderly man in the park, clutching his chest, his life slipping away. He saw Elias, his former patient, driven to suicide by the weaver's influence. And he knew, with a sudden surge of clarity, that he couldn't give in. He couldn't let the weaver win. He had to fight, even if it meant destroying himself in the process. He looked at the weaver, his eyes filled with newfound resolve. "I'm not you," he said, his voice strong and steady. "I will never be you." The weaver's smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure rage. "Fool," it snarled. "You can't resist me. I am you. We are one and the same." The weaver lunged towards Adrian, its claws extended, ready to tear him apart. Adrian braced himself for the attack, ready to fight for his life, for his soul. But as the weaver's claws reached him, he didn't feel pain. Instead, he felt a strange sensation, a tingling in his mind, as if something was shifting, changing. He looked down at his hands and saw that they were glowing, radiating with a bright white light. The light grew stronger, engulfing his entire body, pushing back the darkness that surrounded him. The weaver recoiled, hissing in pain, its form flickering and distorting. "What is this?" it screamed. "What are you doing?" Adrian closed his eyes, focusing his mind, drawing on a power he didn't know he possessed. He thought of his patients, the people he had helped, the lives he had touched. He thought of his friends, his family, the love he had shared. He thought of all the good he had done, all the hope he had inspired. And he realized that the weaver was wrong. He wasn't just a monster. He was also a healer, a protector, a beacon of light in a dark world. He opened his eyes, his gaze fixed on the weaver. "I am not afraid of you," he said, his voice filled with power. "I am not you, and I will not let you control me." He raised his hands, and the light intensified, engulfing the weaver in a blinding flash. The weaver screamed, its form dissolving, its power fading. And then it was gone. Adrian stood alone in the distorted office, the darkness receding, the light slowly restoring the room to its former state. He felt exhausted, drained, but also strangely empowered. He had faced his demons, confronted his inner darkness, and emerged victorious. Or so he thought. As the last vestiges of the weaver's influence faded, a new, chilling realization dawned upon him. The visions hadn't stopped. They were merely dormant, and now he could feel them returning, stronger, more vivid, more insistent than ever before. But this time, they weren't just showing him the deaths of strangers. They were showing him his deaths. Countless scenarios, each more gruesome and terrifying than the last, played out in his mind. A symphony of suffering orchestrated for his personal torment. And he knew, with a growing sense of dread, that the weaver hadn't been defeated. It had merely retreated, regrouped, and was now preparing for its final, devastating assault. But why show him his own demise? The distorted office shimmered, then dissolved, leaving Adrian standing in his own office. But it felt different, colder, somehow tainted. The fluorescent hum seemed louder, more menacing. He was back in the real world, or what he thought was the real world. He staggered to his desk, his legs shaky. He needed to understand. Why these visions of his own death? Was it a final act of cruelty from the weaver, a way to torment him before it finished the job? Or was there something more to it? He ran a hand through his hair, his fingers trembling. He had to think, to analyze, to use the skills that had always been his strength. He pulled out a notepad and began to write, trying to make sense of the chaos in his mind. The visions, he wrote. They started with strangers, but now they're focused on me. Why? Is the weaver trying to break me, to force me to take my own life? He paused, considering the possibility. It was certainly within the realm of the weaver's capabilities, but it felt incomplete, too simple. The weaver was a master manipulator, a puppeteer of the mind. It wouldn't resort to such a direct, unsubtle tactic. There had to be another reason, a deeper, more sinister purpose behind the visions. He looked back at Elias's file, his eyes scanning the cryptic notes, the disturbing drawings. He had missed something, a crucial piece of the puzzle that would unlock the truth. He focused on one particular drawing, a swirling vortex of colors, the same design that had been on the record album. But this time, there was something different, something he hadn't noticed before. Hidden within the vortex, almost imperceptible, were faces. Distorted, grotesque faces, but faces nonetheless. He squinted, trying to make out the features, and then he saw it. One of the faces was his own, or rather, a distorted, demonic version of his own. He gasped, his blood turning to ice. The drawing, it wasn't just a random image. It was a map, a blueprint, a guide to the Weaver's plan, and he was at the center of it. He realized that the Weaver wasn't just trying to kill him, it was trying to transform him, to turn him into something else, something even more monstrous than it already was. The visions of his own death, they weren't a threat, they were—
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past. And the pettiness, a reflection of the emptiness. Hilarious, you think you're worth my time, you're delirious. Mysterious, because you hide behind a fake exterior. Inferior, you know I'll always be a bit superior. Get off of me, this ain't no humble brag. I want you to hear words, you can say them back. I want you to feel free from the chains at last, and to believe in what you got, it was built to last, yeah.
Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Gonna learn the consequence of being incompetent. Mental health is confidence, dreams and some modestness. I'm not here to save the day, that's for you to take away. I could play a million mind games, but instead I say something not illogical, something that is topical. Rub it on and watch it go, make yourself unstoppable. Dreams are irresponsible, but they're always possible. If you just believe, you could be so remarkable.
Thoughts in my head, a collage and they spread. I'll be great one day, going off of my meds. No, I'm not giving up, no, I'm not giving in. I will make it to the top, taking off in the wind. I gotta make it, I'm saving every day to taste it. I'm patient, but my mind, it can hardly take it. I'm chasing a dream that I've had for several ages. A vacant, modern kingdom for the taking.
Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.
Was the key, the answer he had been searching for. He had to find this old house. He had to confront the Weaver in its lair. He had to end this nightmare once and for all. He grabbed his coat, his keys, and headed out the door, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what awaited him, but he knew that he couldn't back down. He had to face his destiny, to embrace his fate, to fight for his life, for his soul. As he stepped out into the night, a cold wind whipped around him, carrying with it the faint scent of decay and despair. He looked up at the sky and saw that the moon was hidden behind a veil of clouds, casting a long, ominous shadow over the city. He felt a chill run down his spine, a sense of foreboding that intensified with each step he took. He knew that he was walking into danger, that he was venturing into the unknown, but he also knew that he was not alone. He had the strength of his convictions, the power of his will, and the unwavering belief in his own goodness. He was ready for the final battle, or so he thought, because as he drove away, a new vision flashed before his eyes. A vision so terrifying, so unexpected, that it made his blood run cold. He saw himself, standing in front of the old house, a sinister smile on his face, welcoming him inside. And he realized, with a growing sense of dread, that the old house wasn't just a place. It was a trap, and he was walking right into it. But how can he trust his own mind when it's the very battleground he's trying to escape? Is there anyone he can truly trust?